In 1949, an eruption occurred near La Palma, a picturesque Spanish island, triggering a series of earthquakes and creating a fault line along the volcano's crest. The landmass shifted ominously toward the ocean, sparking fears among locals that a catastrophic disaster was inevitable. This eerie tale inspired conspiracy theorists and even made its way into a tense Black Mirror-style documentary narrated by Morgan Freeman, who delved into the possibility of a future mega tsunami born from this unstable terrain. In the present day, a group of tourists embarked on a scenic boat tour around La Palma's volcanic coastline, marveling at the breathtaking landscape that seemed plucked straight from Game of Thrones. Amid the serene surroundings, a woman dived into the ocean for a swim, but moments later, her friend grew uneasy when she failed to resurface. Bubbles formed rapidly around the boat as steam enveloped the area, resembling the apocalyptic scenes from the day after tomorrow. Suddenly, her lifeless body floated beneath the boat, and before the passengers could react, the vessel cracked open. Scalding water erupted from below, consuming everyone on board in a shocking moment of chaos. Meanwhile, a Norwegian family arrives on La Palma for their annual Christmas vacation, a tradition spanning 7 years. They are warmly greeted at their favorite hotel, where they've grown close to the staff over time. This year, however, they are surprised to be given an unexpectedly luxurious suite instead of their usual accommodations. As they marvel at the lavish room, the daughter, Sarah, stumbles upon a mysterious earring tucked under the bed. Unbeknownst to them, it belonged to one of the tourists who perished in the recent boating tragedy, a chilling connection they are yet to realize. At the La Palma Geology Institute, scientists are growing increasingly concerned about the volcanic activity on the island and its possible link to the tragic boat accident. Among them, Marie and Haukur discover that the transmitter feeding seismic data to their systems has gone offline. Determined to investigate, they drive up the mountain and proceed on foot to the transmitter site near a cave. While the exterior seems intact, their exploration inside the cave reveals startling changes, streams of running water that weren't there before. As they delve deeper, they find something even more unsettling: the lifeless bodies of dozens of bats scattered across the cave floor, hinting at an ominous escalation of events. Haukur uses a specialized gadget to measure the air in the cave and discovers alarmingly high levels of carbon dioxide and sulfuric gas. As they delve deeper, they find the other half of the transmitter completely destroyed. The culprit appears to be a massive crack in the cave roof, with fallen rock sediments crushing the equipment. Returning to the institute, Haukur and Marie report their findings to their boss, Alvaro, who reprimands them for jumping to conclusions about an impending eruption. Alvaro insists they gather more concrete evidence before alarming the public, reminding them of his previous mistake 3 years ago, when a false eruption prediction led to mass panic and unnecessary evacuations. Later, Marie reviews a simulation video illustrating the catastrophic impact of a tsunami in the region, leaving her visibly shaken. At home, her brother Eric shares details about his next diving project, mentioning an unusual phenomenon: turtles converging at La Palma in large numbers, a behavior contrary to their solitary nature. The next day, the Norwegian family enjoys lunch together at the hotel. However, their neurodivergent son, Tobias, grows upset when his meal doesn't match the picture on the menu, prompting his parents to intervene and calm the situation. Amidst these seemingly ordinary moments, the undercurrent of growing danger remains, as the island's mysteries deepen. As Sarah lounges by the pool, she exchanges flirtatious glances with Charlie, who later approaches her with an invitation to hang out. Sarah reluctantly declines, explaining she needs to look after her younger brother, Tobias. Observing the exchange, her father, Frederick, encourages Sarah to accept the invitation, volunteering to take care of Tobias himself. Grateful for the rare chance to relax, Sarah agrees and leaves to meet Charlie. However, as Frederick keeps an eye on Tobias, he becomes distracted by the sight of his wife, Jennifer, chatting with the hotel employee who upgraded their room. The conversation seems a little too friendly, sparking a twinge of jealousy in Frederick. When he turns back, Tobias has vanished. Frederick panics and runs to fetch Sarah, interrupting her just as she begins talking to Charlie. Together, they search for Tobias, eventually finding him on a hill, entranced by the sight of turtles gathering unusually close to shore. Meanwhile, Eric dives into the water to investigate the peculiar behavior of the turtles. Back at the hotel, tension brews when the employee comes to update the family about their rented car. Frederick's jealousy boils over, leading to a heated argument with Jennifer that the kids overhear from the adjoining room. Simultaneously, Alvaro meets a doctor friend at the morgue, pressing for updates on the biopsies conducted on victims of the mysterious boat incident. The pieces of a larger, more ominous puzzle begin to fall into place. The doctor shows Alvaro alarming evidence. The victims' burns were caused by extremely hot gas, and they had inhaled lethal levels of carbon dioxide and sulfur. Concerned this could signal lava activity, The doctor presses the issue, but Alvaro dismisses it, unwilling to raise panic. Meanwhile, at the institute, Marie and Haukur analyze the cave water samples. The water's mineral deficiency suggests it traveled rapidly from the surface to the underground tunnels. Marie speculates the crack may extend all the way to the mountaintop, a theory Haukur corroborates by cross-referencing topography data. Shockingly, the crack aligns perfectly with the fault line from the 1949 eruption. Determined to investigate further, they hike back to the mountain and confirm their worst fears. The crack indeed reaches the summit. Using advanced equipment, they begin measuring seismic activity. At the hotel, Frederick notices faint tremors while standing on the balcony. Simultaneously, alarms blare at the institute as the monitors detect a gas emission on a nearby hill and indicate a potential earthquake. Alvaro orders his team to notify the civil guard immediately. As tension escalates, Marie calls Alvaro to report her findings, further solidifying their growing concern that the island may be on the brink of a catastrophic eruption. Suddenly, gas bursts from the ground around them, forcing Marie and Haukur to sprint for their lives. On their way, they stumble upon a group of campers, and Marie pauses to warn them. She quickly teaches them to pour water on handkerchiefs and cover their faces as they flee. But the dense gas clouds limit visibility, and in the chaos, Marie is separated from the others. Disoriented, she trips and tumbles down the rocky terrain before losing consciousness. Moments later, she dreams of drowning in a tumultuous ocean. When she awakens, Marie finds herself in a hospital bed. Alvaro is by her side, informing her that Haukur inhaled too much gas and is now in an induced coma, while tragically, the campers didn't survive. Tensions flare as Marie and Alvaro argue about issuing a public warning. Alvaro fears another false alarm could damage their credibility permanently, but Marie recounts her harrowing experience of losing her parents in a tsunami that could have been prevented with proper warnings. Determined to take action, she calls Eric, urging him to leave the sea immediately. Meanwhile, back at the hotel, Sarah finally gets a chance to talk to Charlie. But her excitement fades when she spots Charlie chatting with another guy, mistakenly assuming he's her boyfriend, leaving Sarah deflated and confused. Frederick and Jennifer consider taking a scenic drive to the mountains, but a local warns them that the area is closed due to fatalities. The man also casually mentions Tobias's earlier incident, shocking Jennifer, who had no idea. Once back in their hotel room, the revelation triggers another heated argument, audible to their children in the next room. Frederick accuses Jennifer of being emotionally absent and reminds her that he knows Sarah better, despite her being his stepdaughter. Upset, Jennifer retreats to the bathroom to compose herself, while a tearful Sarah sneaks out of the room and into the city. Desperate, Sarah calls her uncle Jens, who works at Norway's Foreign Affairs Ministry, asking for money for a plane ticket home. When Jens advises against her decision, Sarah abruptly hangs up. Jens tries reaching Jennifer, but her phone is silent as she's meditating. Determined, Sarah manages to board a flight to Madrid, only to be surprised by a supportive text from Charlie during her layover. Meanwhile, Marie and Alvaro present their findings to the island's mayor. Although initially hesitant, fearing another false alarm, the mayor eventually agrees to secure them a meeting with the government. Later, Marie pleads with Eric to return to their home country, recounting the devastating tsunami that claimed their parents as a grim warning. Eric dismisses Marie's concerns, accusing her of wanting to get rid of him, and storms off angrily. Back at the institute, scientists observe a worrying rise in tremors across the island, which Alvaro interprets as evidence of ash emissions reaching the surface. He explains the 3 stages leading to a volcanic eruption: gas emission, ash release, and finally, lava flow. Data from the mountain reveals that the fault line is still expanding. Moments later, the data takes a sharp turn for the worse, prompting Alvaro to order immediate warnings to all airports. Suddenly, a massive ash eruption occurs, visible from the hotel, where employees try to calm tourists by downplaying it as harmless. Unfortunately, Sarah's plane receives the ash cloud warning too late. The aircraft flies directly into the eruption, causing its engines to ignite. Back at the hotel, Jennifer and Frederick receive a frantic call from Jens, revealing Sarah's plan to leave. Assuming flights have been grounded, the couple looks out just in time to witness the horrifying crash of Sarah's plane. The tragedy quickly makes headlines, and they rush to the local hospital, where survivors are being brought in by rescue teams. Frederick and Jennifer search the hospital desperately for Sarah, but when they can't find her, Jennifer loses her composure, yelling at the overwhelmed nurses. Frederick, trying to keep things under control, pulls her away. Meanwhile, Alvaro and his team secure a critical meeting with the government. Despite initial skepticism about the ash eruption leading to a full volcanic disaster, the officials are finally convinced to begin emergency preparations. With the gravity of the situation growing, Alvaro advises his team to evacuate with their families, though he chooses to stay behind to monitor the crisis. A heartfelt goodbye ensues as Marie hugs him before leaving to check on her brother. Back at home, Marie discovers Eric is missing and refuses to answer her calls. Simultaneously, Jennifer and Frederick are visited by an officer who delivers grim news. Sarah's name is on the list of missing passengers, as the front section of the plane exploded on impact. Devastated, the couple returns to their hotel room, only to be shocked by the sight of Sarah sitting there with Tobias. After an emotional reunion, Sarah takes a moment by the pool, where she finds Charlie and confesses that it was Charlie's text that prompted her to leave the plane. Overwhelmed by relief and emotion, the two share a kiss under the quiet glow of the evening. In the dead of night, Marie receives a frantic call from Eric and rushes to a nearby bar to pick him up. Arriving at the chaotic scene, she mistakes someone being arrested for her brother and intervenes in desperation. In the confusion, she accidentally strikes a police officer and is promptly arrested. As she's taken away in the police car, she spots Eric standing outside the bar and shouts at him to leave the island immediately. By morning, Eric visits her in jail, guilt-stricken for not believing her sooner. Seeing her panic the previous night made him realize the gravity of her warnings. Determined to make amends, Eric promises to stay with her and leave the island together. Meanwhile, Jens gets an urgent call from his superior, summoning him back to the Foreign Affairs Ministry. The team reviews a chilling simulation detailing how a catastrophic natural disaster could obliterate the Canary Islands within hours or days. Though the information is classified, plans are set in motion to secretly evacuate Norwegian citizens. Back at the hotel, Sarah wakes up next to Charlie, and the two share a tender kiss before Sarah sneaks back to her room. Overwhelmed with emotion, she finally confesses to her mother that she likes girls. In a heartfelt moment, Jennifer embraces her daughter with unconditional support, reassuring her through tears. The family's moment of joy in the pool is shattered when Jens calls Jennifer with urgent news about a looming tsunami. He explains that La Palma has been deprioritized, with large ferries redirected to bigger islands. The only ferry left departs in 20 minutes, leaving no time to spare. The family scrambles to pack essentials, and Sarah desperately tries to warn Charlie but can't find her in her room. With no taxis in sight, Frederick resorts to stealing a van, racing against time through chaotic streets filled with panicked people. At the harbor, as the family rushes to board the ferry, the van's furious owners catch up and physically confront Frederick. While the rest of the family begs the sailor to delay departure, Frederick offers money to pacify the men and dashes toward the ferry, but it's too late, it departs without him. Devastated, Sarah calls Charlie, urging her to leave the island, but the call drops before she can explain. Meanwhile, at the Institute, Alvaro and his team lose all signals from the mountain transmitters. Realizing the tsunami's arrival is imminent, he contacts the government, urging immediate action to prepare for the disaster, knowing time is running out. As the evacuation sirens echo across the island, chaos erupts. Crowds surge toward the last boats, desperate to escape, while hospital staff work cautiously to relocate plane crash survivors. Halkur, awakened from his coma, is stunned by the unfolding catastrophe. Frederick manages to secure a spot on a departing boat with the help of a hotel friend, but before he can leave, the volcano erupts violently, spewing rivers of molten lava into the air. At the police station, Eric furiously pleads for Mary's release, but the officers refuse, insisting on following protocol. At the dock, Frederick spots a distressed mother and her baby, ultimately sacrificing his place on the boat to help them escape, resigning himself to remain on the island. At the Institute, Halkur shocks Alvaro by refusing to evacuate, and the two decide to spend their final hours on one last field expedition. Global media outlets broadcast the dramatic footage of the volcanic eruption, rising tsunami, and chaotic evacuation efforts. Sarah manages to call Jens to recount the harrowing events, prompting him to seek assistance from his boss. However, his plea backfires when his boss reprimands him for leaking classified information about the disaster. As panic consumes the island, Jens secretly collaborates with a wave researcher, defying his boss' orders to assist in identifying safe zones for those stranded. Meanwhile, Frederick, now resigned to his fate, makes a tearful phone call to his family, sharing words of love before losing the signal. At the police station, chaos reigns as officers abandon their posts, leaving Eric to take matters into his own hands. He frees Marie and another prisoner, and as they flee, an explosive eruption atop the volcano leaves them frozen in terror. The trio eventually meets Frederick, who tells them there are no boats left. Eric, however, reveals he still has his diving boat, sparking a desperate dash to the beach where they find it intact. As they prepare to escape, the other prisoner threatens them with a gun, refusing to share the boat. Eric offers a peaceful solution, but the monster's greed sparks a violent struggle. During the fight, the gun fires, and Eric is fatally shot. Marie cradles her brother as he dies in her arms, overwhelmed with grief. Frederick, fueled by rage, attacks the man. The fight escalates into a brutal struggle, ending with Frederick drowning the criminal in a fit of desperation and vengeance. Exhausted but determined, Frederick and Marie board the boat, leaving behind the carnage as they race against the clock to escape the impending disaster. Frederick and Marie finally set off on Eric's boat, fending off desperate people attempting to board. Frederick uses the gun to keep them at bay, focused solely on their escape. Meanwhile, Jens receives an update from the wave expert, who pinpoints a bay near Tenerife as the only potential safe zone from the tsunami. Despite the slim 50-50 survival odds, Jens reports the finding to his boss, but she deems the chances too risky to issue a public announcement. On La Palma, Halcour and Alvaro, resigned to their fate, don special suits to venture near the volcano. Amidst the roaring lava flows, they share a final toast with wine, embracing their last moments. At the airport, Jennifer and her kids manage to secure wristbands for a rescue flight, including Frederick's. As they prepare to board, Sarah spots Charlie outside and rushes back to find her. Discovering Charlie without a wristband, Sarah gives her Frederick's, determined to ensure her safety. Simultaneously, Frederick and Marie reach Tenerife just as the volcano collapses, triggering the massive tsunami. The eruption destroys everything in its path, killing Halcour and Alvaro. The tremors reach the airport, causing panic among passengers as the plane shakes violently. With time running out, the family's fate hangs precariously in the balance. Jennifer, growing increasingly worried about Sarah, decides to leave the plane with Tobias to search for her, unaware that Sarah and Charlie are already boarding. Meanwhile, Marie uses her binoculars from Tenerife and realizes the tsunami will hit the island as well. Back in Norway, Jens takes a bold step, leveraging a cancelled press conference to reveal the truth about the tsunami to the gathered reporters. He shares the coordinates of the only safe spot before security removes him, ensuring the message spreads. Frederick and Marie receive the coordinates via text, prompting them to jump back on their boat in a desperate attempt to reach safety. At the airport, chaos unfolds as passengers in the last two planes see the massive wave approaching. Sarah calls Jennifer to reassure her that she's on the plane, urging her to stay safe. Charlie, meanwhile, receives the safe spot coordinates and forwards them to Sarah, who then shares them with her mother. Jennifer, unsure how to read the coordinates, panics as the internet shuts down. Luckily, Tobias, with his knack for maps, quickly identifies the safe location. They rush to leave the airport, joining the last remaining staff member in a race against time. The airport employee volunteers his van to transport the remaining stranded passengers, including Jennifer and Tobias. As they drive, Tobias spots the massive tsunami in the distance and panics, prompting Jennifer to keep him distracted with comforting words. Meanwhile, Marie and Frederick struggle aboard their boat, navigating increasingly turbulent waters. With each passing second, the waves grow more ferocious, and their phones lose signal, leaving them without a map. Two monstrous waves crash dangerously close behind them, but through sheer determination, they narrowly avoid disaster. Back at the airport, the tsunami reaches its devastating crescendo. The ground cracks open, preventing the plane from taking off. The wave engulfs the aircraft, shattering windows and flooding the cabin. Jennifer's group, seeing the water rushing in, abandons the van and sprints up the mountain to higher ground. Elsewhere, Marie and Frederick finally reach the safe spot, joining a group of survivors huddled there. Relief turns to heartbreak for Frederick when Jennifer and Tobias arrive but Sarah is missing. Inside the submerged plane, Sarah regains consciousness, astonished to find herself alive. Desperate to save Charlie, who remains unconscious, Sarah teams up with a stewardess to perform CPR. Moments later, Charlie gasps awake, and the two cling to hope amid the chaos. The girls then step out of the plane and find the whole airport destroyed. The media covers the disaster, showing the destruction on the islands but also in West Africa and Southern Europe. Hundreds of buildings have fallen and thousands of people are dead. Now the Americans are waiting for Impact 2 while helicopters are sent out to look for survivors. In Norway, Jens is fired for his stunt and waits anxiously at home for news about his family. In the afternoon, a former coworker comes by to share some confidential info. A bunch of survivors were found in the safe spot, including Jennifer. Hundreds of people are alive thanks to Jens' quick thinking. The government sets up a relief camp on the island where the people from the safe spot are gathering. A helicopter brings the few survivors from the plane to, and Sarah can finally reunite with her family. Sometime later, Marie goes diving to swim with the turtles and connects to the memory of her brother, who reminds her that people should listen to nature.